Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Global Women in Security 2020 Speaker Series. My next guest, Miss Lauren Buitta. She's with girlsecurity.org. Miss Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I love this name. It's just the perfect name, I got to say. And I'm really fascinated about the history. So tell us about the history, how you got started with this and where you came up with that name.
Sure. So I was born and raised in the Midwest, and I kind of had always had an interest in things that were, I don't know, there weren't many girls or women involved. Football, altar girls in the parish. I worked construction through college in Chicago, and I graduated from Boston College just a year after 9/11. And I had been studying international security, but I returned to Chicago and was hired by a national security think tank. And at the same time, my brother was deployed to Iraq. So I was working on a lot of kind of the early issues, early national security issues after we invaded Iraq, and had this very personal connection to what was happening. And at the time, I didn't really understand what national security meant. I studied political science, but national security was, or at least it felt like a new concept to me. So both through kind of my experiences of working for a think tank in the Midwest and having to translate national security information to a public audience, and then also having this personal connection of having someone deployed, I came to develop a pretty robust understanding of what national security meant. And then at the same time, I was a woman in national security, working in the Midwest and a lot of time in Washington, D.C. And there were few women in national security, and this was almost 20 years ago. So at the time, there were women who were starting initiatives on national security, but they were kind of sporadic, and many of them ended up disappearing. And so just by chance, I resigned from my position at the think tank after about 10 years and was hired by a client to do analysis on urban security in Chicago. So looking at the crossover of gang warfare and drug cartels. And that opportunity took a very wild left turn, and I ended up running a whistleblower lawsuit against the city of Chicago for racial discrimination. And I'm quite grateful for that opportunity, which I was given by a mentor at the time who just recently passed away, because it provided a depth of knowledge and a lens through which I was not viewing national security, and that lens was kind of local security. And so my experiences of being a young woman in national security and then working on kind of local urban security issues as well as systemic racism prompted me to consider how we would actually change national security institutions to not just include more women, but reflect the security lenses and contributions of women. So in 2016, I started Girl Security really as not necessarily an experiment, but I didn't know how communities and girls would respond to a program about national security. And I suppose maybe it was the timing was right, but it just took off. And over the last 3 years, it's grown into a national and now global program, empowering girls to not just consider national security careers, but also just engage in discourse in national security. And I have a short overview that I can provide to the audience just so they have an understanding of how Girl Security's model works.
Oh, sure. Let's see that. And I love your comment about the lens, right? Because the more people we have participating in security, no matter what your gender, your background, your race, where you come from, multiple lenses is the only way to solve this. And I have 9 sisters, so I get this. All right, I totally get it. Let's take a look at your slideshow.
Thank you. So just very briefly, it's a very simple mission of closing the gender gap in national security through learning, training, and mentoring support for girls. And this quick overview will give you just a sense of how our model operates, as well as some of the kind of key components. So as for our demographic, Girl Security mindfully works across the country to engage with diverse girls, diverse race, gender, income, identity. And that's totally by design, because we believe that the national security workforce should represent the nation it is securing. And so we really want to bring in those diverse perspectives, as well as draw in young people who might not have access to opportunities in the national security space, which are usually quite competitive and are often based in Washington, D.C. So we work nationwide. We have partnerships across 15 states. And recently, at the invitation of governments and civil society partners, we are scaling globally. By age, we have 2 pieces of the kind of how we work with different age groups, what we call our engagement model, which is primarily education. So we work with middle and high school age girls to educate them about how national security has been defined for them, primarily by men. And then for girls at the high school level who have some inclination that they want to pursue a national security career, we provide them with mentoring and resources to advance them through college, through career. So in addition to kind of the what you see on the face of national security or a girl securities model is kind of what we call girl securities aptitude. So as women practitioners in national security, we observe how the national security environment is changing, and that girls are literally on the front lines of some of our most challenging national security challenges, national security threats. So we start with kind of this message of girls evolve a particular security aptitude. In other words, girls and women never take their security for granted. We evolve in constant threat to our physical and emotional security. Yet in new and unforeseen ways, national security is piercing girls' security domain, specifically around disinformation and threats in the digital space. We know from our engagement over the last several years that girls are looking for context to talk about national security. But because national security has kind of been this broad concept, and also because people tend to have pretty strong partisan opinions about what national security is, mostly it's just been a lack of public education and context, and that's where Girl Security provides that context and education. At Girl Security, we firmly believe that engaging girls and young women in national security will be the most transformative global security advancement of the 21st century. And we say that because there's never been an intentional model to engage girls, and we believe that engagement at the local level, starting in the middle and high school levels, can be transformative, not just for increasing the number of women in national security, but also increasing the level of participation and awareness that girls have civically in national security issues. So building on kind of the focus on the demographic and the messaging and kind of mindfulness behind Girl Security's model, the organization has three primary parts. We have what we call our Secure, Empower, and Advance model. The Securing with Information comes with learning modules that are developed by women national security practitioners with adolescent mental health specialists, curriculum developers, and girls. Importantly, we engage girls in all of our learning content, both to vet it for language that might be inaccessible, but also to ensure that they have kind of the most dynamic and engaging experience. In terms of empowering, we empower with training. So we develop simulations and gaming, war games as well, that provide girls with the types of skill sets that we know they'll need to advance in national security. And we're referring to both physical and cyber security when we talk about national security. And then the last part is the advancement piece, which is phased mentoring. So for those girls who are interested in careers, we pair them with a mentor one step ahead of them in their development and advancement. And we find that with respect to our mentor network, certainly the mentoring is one of the most valued and important parts of our work. It provides not only a sense of community for girls, but it also provides a positive and supportive learning environment for them. So the next part of our model, which we're often asked about, is how we work. Girl Security works in schools, with schools, and in the community. So we work with schools to bring in both our topical learning modules as well as our simulation in games. We also work with schools to facilitate teacher learning. So the goal of our learning modules isn't to create another curriculum that teachers have to teach. Our goal is to provide teachers, primarily civics, social studies, comparative politics, with content that they can incorporate into existing curriculum to help basically connect the dots of their curriculum around how national security ideology, as well as national security events, have impacted their courses. And then we also work in the community. So we've partnered with the Girl Scouts. We've created the first national security patch. And we also work with girl youth organizations across this kind of national security sector. Specifically, we're often working with girls who have cybersecurity initiatives. So within the context of our programming as well, we emphasize what we call core competencies. These are competencies that we as women in national security believe can benefit girls regardless of how technology changes through the course of their careers. These competencies include ethics, strategy, critical thinking, innovation, and collaboration. And specifically with respect to strategy and innovation, we have heard from girls as well as young women who have moved through our program that oftentimes they're developing these skill sets in a much more tense environment. So our goal is to take very high level learning and training, scale it for girls and young women, and provide them with that positive learning experience at the front end of their careers. So kind of as they enter the playing field, they will have that career, that experience behind them. The other component of kind of the simulation and gaming around strategy and innovation and critical thinking as well is collaboration. So we're also building social pipelines of girls who enter our program, have an interest in national security, and then mention to their friend, like, hey, I'm doing this really cool program. Did you know what national security meant? And we're finding that girls are signing up to be mentored through kind of that social pipeline effect as well. So I always like to share an essay by one of our mentees, Avery, who was 16 at the time that she wrote this essay for our website. And I think what is so powerful about the essay is providing an insight into adults today about the security lens that specifically adolescent girls are viewing the world through. You know, we tend to kind of minimize younger generations' experiences because based on comparison, perhaps we believe that they might not be as significant or catastrophic. But when you read Avery's essay following the Boston Marathon bombings and understand that a young person wanted to understand the context of this national security scenario, but really lacked the support and community to have that discourse, you understand how profound the experience is that teen girls are living with today. And I think just amid the pandemic, as well as the upcoming election season, I think as adults, we can do a better job of recognizing the environment in which young people are living. And rather than minimize it, try to use it as an opportunity to empower them, specifically in national security, because of how it's evolving towards this kind of borderless domain. But the part that I really appreciate about her essay is when she says national security is a conversation that we need to have with young people. And that really is what Girl Security is trying to do. It's inviting girls into a discourse about a topic that women have historically been either marginalized in and or their experiences have been completely erased from the history of national security. We're inviting girls into that space, asking them what they think national security should mean, not for us, but for their generation, because we know national security is going to look very different in 10, 20 years, and then providing them with the skills that they would need to succeed, regardless of whether or not they pursue careers in national security. Because yes, we want to see more women in national security, but we also know that national security happens in the private sector. It happens at home. It happens in academia across STEM fields. And so we really want all girls who participate in our program to feel like they have a grasp of what national security means. They feel empowered to engage in the discourse, and they have a skill set that they can apply across sectors, regardless of their career. Thank you. So these are just some quick metrics to give you a sense of how Girl Security has grown, which has been quite rapidly over the last couple of years. We have partnerships across the US. We've reached over 5,000 girls. We'll double our impact this year. We are onboarding about 10 to 20 mentees every month. And we also have a growing network of mentors as well as organizational mentors who partner to provide programming. And we've received some really terrific media coverage in the last 2 years as well. So ultimately, as far as Girl Security Global is concerned, the idea for Girl Security Global is really to build a network of girls who can find some in commonness with respect to security experiences that they share, as well as how women in security are represented in their countries, but also build discourse around the unique security experiences that girls around the world have as well. And so the idea is really to be building this kind of global workforce of girls and women who have a particular security lens that they can exercise throughout their lives in national security or security broadly, as well as other fields.
Lauren, I have to say that was very, very powerful. And, you hit on a lot of key points there. Women have a different perception of security than men, as well as expected, for all kinds of different reasons. And we need both of these perspectives.
But also build discourse around the unique security experiences that girls around the world have as well. And so the idea is really to be building this kind of global workforce of girls and women who have a particular security lens that they can exercise throughout their lives in national security or security broadly, as well as other fields.
Lauren, I have to say that was very, very powerful. And, you hit on a lot of key points there. Women have a different perception of security than men, as well as expected, for all kinds of different reasons. And we need both of these perspectives, both these lenses to really make everybody safer. And I will tell you from my personal experience of having hired over 4,000 security personnel in my career, my women employees have always been the most responsible, the most diligent, and by the way, the most intuitive. There's a different way to perceive things, a different vision at looking at things that I think is really, really important. Now, I also find it interesting that you mentioned that you had not seen this initiative ever, and I think you're right on that. I don't think anybody's taken this lead on this to make this a specific empowerment. And I think you're going to succeed. I think this is a paradigm shift.
Well, I appreciate that. I think there's a demand. I mean, the general reaction to girl security is it's long overdue, and I agree with that. And I think the timing in which we find ourselves, where national security is a topic that's talked about every day on the news. It's certainly timely, and we now know from working across the country as well as working with global partners that there are girls who see themselves in this space. And it's important that their voices are represented, because what could be more important in terms of a common cause than national security? And so I agree it's going to be a paradigm shifter, and we're looking forward to building a national security workforce that looks more like the country.
What can people do to get involved besides the traditional send me an email and join up? I mean, that's obviously something we want to do, but give us some ideas of how people might think of this stuff differently. How might the average person start thinking about themselves in relationship to their daughter, their coworker, right? In those spaces, and how we can raise the bar on all this stuff.
I appreciate that. I mean, I think, as you said, the easiest ways are sign up to to offer mentoring, to participate in programming, to host a program. Certainly, word of mouth is wonderful. We've had a lot of organic growth, and I think that's what we've learned with Girl Security since we've launched is we have lots of diverse groups and individuals approach us. And what I find so fascinating is that they find some unique value in the program. They either find the mentoring piece compelling or the kind of learning and training piece compelling. And so that's been rather overwhelming and wonderful to see how everyone is kind of finding something in it. I would say the takeaway that generally strikes people, and usually it's primarily men who take note of this point, is the idea that girls have this inherent security aptitude that they exercise every single day. And that if security is not freedom from fear, but the ability to respond amid diversity, which we know, of course, so well, and girls know this post 9/11, then this is something that girls and women do every single day. It's an inherent aptitude that they exercise. And that should have value. So there is this greater call to action, right, which is for people in positions of authority to consider how you start to create policies or laws or reshape institutions that you might be in charge of, to not just attract more women, but to reflect the inherent security value that women exercise and offer within the institutional ideals, within the institutional systems, within the institutional practices. And so that's really kind of a broad call to action that I think anyone at any level can really participate in making that change within their respective industry or community. Because for us, we see where girls are headed in their careers. They want to go into the military. They want to go into intelligence. They want to go into journalism or law or policy. At the same time, within each of those respective fields, there are consistent reports of sexual harassment or assault, cyberbullying, being digitally targeted online. And our job is not only to provide them with the support that they need, but it's really a call to action to say that people representing those different industries need to also make sure that when girls and women enter those spaces, they're safe for their inclusion. And I think that's kind of a bigger mission of Girl Security that one might not glean on the website.
Well, you hit another interesting point. You have a lot of interesting points. You're very specific.
I don't know about that, but
no, it's true. You said that we should look at women in security as a value, not a mandate. You didn't say the word mandate, but that's what I'm saying, right? So one perception is, we need more of this and more of that. That's one way to look at it. But really the best way is, here's a value, an actual intrinsic value, because it's a different lens, it's a different perspective, a different level of intelligence. I think that's so valuable. Now, I learned this in my police career. Many of my very best partners in police work were female officers. And here was the little disconnect. I think men in security, maybe men in police work, not so much now, but maybe in the 80s, right? I think the look was women can't participate in the tactics, right? Mm-hmm. Tactics are the brute force, and we're going to kick the door, and we're going to do all these kind of things. which isn't not true. We're learning that's not true. But if you're going to take that position on it, what about the strategy? Women are brilliant at strategy, right? So I think all these ways to look at these things through a different perspective are really going to raise the bar on this. And I'm excited about it. I think it's going to exponentially improve the quality of life and safety for all of us. And let's get busy.
No, I believe so. Thank you. Yes, I agree.
My guest has been Laura Buitta. She's with girlsecurity.org, empowering girls in security. Lauren, thank you so much. This is a fascinating conversation, and we wish you luck. And let's check in and see what's going on in the next 6 months. Come back and talk to me, and I really want to know how this is going.
Thank you so much, Chuck. I really appreciate it.